Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think that it's 3 minutes past 6 p.m. And our start time is 6 p.m. So we are 3 minutes late. I intend that we start now. Let me welcome all of you to this week's session of COVID Business and Society Seminar Lectures for the University of Ghana Business School. I want to thank all of the participants who have joined in and those that will join later. But also, most importantly, we want to thank our 3 presenters who are giving presentations this evening. This is not to do a vote of thanks, but let me say thank you to our commissioner, the Deputy Commissioner for the National Insurance Commission, who has agreed to present even though he has such a packed schedule. And then to our colleague and friend from Birmingham City University, Professor Javed, for agreeing at such a very short notice to give a presentation today. I want to thank our colleague Vera, who also accepted to present along with our 2 other colleagues. The essence of the COVID Society and Business and Society Seminar Series is to provide the business school and its stakeholders the opportunity to be disruptive in thoughts and to reconstruct thoughts. We want to be thought leaders and to help to shape the discussions that happen around the world, and especially in Ghana and in our sub-region, on what the impact of COVID is on business. As a leading business school within this space, it is important that our role in shaping the discussions and helping to direct policy action and business practices is stepped up even during this era of COVID. And I'm happy that we all have been able to make time to join. Let me say good evening to my lecturer, Dr. Dankwe. Thank you very much for joining. I can see you. I'm excited. I have a lot of very wonderful people who have made time to join us this evening, and I'm extremely excited. The first presenter, and I want us to go ahead straight, I will introduce the presenters when it is their time to present. So let me quickly introduce to you the first presenter. The first presenter is Mr. Michael Andoh. I don't think he's a brother to our head of department for finance. Our head of department for finance is Dr. Charles Andoh. Michael Andoh, I'm not sure you are brothers, but Mr. Michael Andoh is actually our own product. He graduated from the University of Ghana Business School with a BSc Administration degree, and then he proceeded to University of Leicester in UK to grab an MBA. He is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Accountants UK and a member of the Institute of Taxation and Associates of Toronto Center. He's worked extensively in the private sector before joining the National Insurance Commission in 2000. He is currently the Deputy Commissioner in charge of the day-to-day administration of the National Insurance Commission. In fact, we have had a lot of opportunities to tap into his diverse experience. And I'm happy to say that on occasion of our management day, he was one of the speakers who came to present to our students. Mr. Michael Kofi Andoh has such vast experience in the insurance sector that we think that his input into our conversation this evening will be extremely important in shaping the discourse. Mr. Kofi Andoh would be given the opportunity to share his slide. For those of you who have friends who haven't joined yet, tell them that we have space for 500 people in this seminar. And now I see 46. To tell people, your friends, to join. But Mr. Andoh, you are free to start now. You can share your screen. I've enabled you to share your screen, and so you can share your screen and then proceed to give your presentation. We have given you up to 30 minutes for you to do your presentation. We will have 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we will take our next presenter. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Andoh, for agreeing to speak to us this evening. I need to unmute you. I hope that I haven't. Okay.
You are.
Yes, you are unmuted. You are unmuted. Sorry about that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I am glad you invited me to do this presentation. I was still struggling to put up my slides. And so I will continue to try, but until I do so, I'm able to succeed. I will continue with I will start with the discussion.
Yes.
So the discussion will follow. I will do a very brief introduction. Then I will, I think that I am succeeding in putting up my presentation. So
I'm sorry, I think you were not enabled earlier, but now you are enabled, so you should be able to show your screen.
Okay. Okay, so it's coming up. Just give me a couple of seconds. Okay. So I go here and then I say share content and go to no. Share content.
So down there, there's a green button that says share screen.
Yes.
So
and
once
then
you click it, then you can select once you start sharing your screen, you can go to any document on your computer.
Yeah.
If it's open already.
That's what I am trying to go there into my inbox.
Okay.
Okay, I think I am still having some problems here. I will connect this and then give me just a couple of minutes.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Then you say save. Okay. Okay. Then you go here.
I could do you.
Yeah.
If you could actually email it to me now, and then I can share if it's becoming difficult.
Okay. Okay. I will. How do I get your?
The email address is so J as in justice.
Okay.
N for Nana.
1 minute. Okay. So
I think you sent us an email earlier. I could just reply to that. Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'm forwarding. It says forward. Include attachment. And you say J
N Nana. So J N. Then B for boy.
Yes.
A for apple.
Yes.
W for world.
Okay.
O for orange.
Okay.
L for lion, and E for elephant.
Okay.
at UG
UG
dot edu. So Edward
edu.
David Universe dot GH as in Ghana.
GH. Okay. All right. Yes, I have sent it. It should be coming.
Okay.
Moment from now.
Okay, now I have it.
You have it. Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay.
So just downloading it now, and then I should share it in a minute.
Okay.
Great. I think I have it now.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry for giving you trouble this evening. So I should share that now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I have it now.
Right.
Great. So.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's move to the next slide where it shows my outline.
Okay.
Good. So I'll be doing a brief introduction. I will be doing an overview of the industry so you can situate the presentation within some context. I will look at the broad economic impacts of COVID and how it affects the industry. And then I'll look at the direct impact on the industry and the impact on regulation. And then I'll briefly talk about how we have responded to those impacts so far. Great. So briefly, this is what we'll be talking about. Right. So yes, let's move to the next slide. And you see the figures there. I'm sure you are all very familiar with the figures that COVID has impacted every aspect of our lives, and insurance is included. Let me say that this is a presentation based on an initial assessment. There is a detailed research going on the impact, which will come out with some empirical figures. But this is from an initial assessment that we have done. I think it gives quite a good idea. So we can rely on the information as we have it now. Okay, so let's look at the insurance industry. We talk about the Ghanaian insurance industry. As at now, we have about 29 non-life. So in the insurance industry, we have life insurance companies, we have non-life insurance companies, we have reinsurance companies, we have insurance broking companies, we have reinsurance broking companies. I'll briefly explain what they do. So our Insurance Act says that an insurance company cannot do both life and non-life. So an insurance company is either a life or a non-life company. If you visit some other jurisdictions, you would see what we call a composite company, a company that does both life and non-life. We don't have that here. So our companies are either life or non-life. And so we have 29 of the non-life and 20 of the life. I think it should be 20 and not 24. Reinsurance companies are companies that insure insurance companies. In other words, insurance companies spread their risks through reinsurance companies, and we have 3 of them. We have insurance brokers. Insurance brokers are the go-betweens between those who are insuring and the insurance company. So we insurance brokers in Ghana, an insurance broker in Ghana is a company. So we have insurance broking companies. Agents are individuals. I'm explaining because in some jurisdictions, these might be different. In some jurisdictions, a broker is a human being. In Ghana, a broker is a company. So we have those companies. We can go ahead and take a look at the main some market figures, which you can see there. You can see that as at fourth quarter 2019, that is end of 2019, the gross premiums were about 3.2 billion Ghana cedis. This is split about 1.65 life and 1.15 non-life. So the life industry is slightly bigger than non-life. It is interesting to note that just about 5 years ago, non-life, but now we have life growing bigger than non-life. Then you have the expenses, the claims. The other important figure there is total assets. We have total assets of about 6.5 billion. Again, about 3.8 of that is for life, and about 2.7 of that is for non-life. So again, you see the life side is bigger than the non-life side. Okay, let's move on so that we can. This slide tells you about the main players in the industry. So basically, these are the top 10 non-life companies, and you can see that they make up about 50% of the total non-life premiums. In other words, if you take the top 10 non-life insurers, which you can see on the chart there, you can see that the top 5 alone, remember there are about 29 of them, and the top 5 alone make up about 50% of the non-life market. Let's see the next slide, which will tell us about the life side. I think we've missed one of the slides, which should be for life.
Oh,
so
sorry.
let's go like an, okay. So this is the life again, the top 10 for the life, and you can see that here the top 5 make up about 78% of the premiums. So the concentration is more here than in the non-life, as you can see. The top 5 here make up about 75%. And as I said, the life has now grown bigger than the non-life. Just 3-5 years ago, this wasn't the case. So yes, let's move on. And okay. So we'll now look at the okay, some figures on distribution. As at now, you have I'll tell you briefly about distribution channels. So the life business is mainly distributed by agents. This is important because when I talk about the impact, it will play out very clearly. The life business is mainly sold by agents. And agents here, as I said, are the tied agents. They are human beings. They're the guys who go around selling the business. In fact, about 63% of the non-life of the life business is sold by agents. About another 14% is direct. That's between the policyholders and the insurance companies. And 11% is sold through bank assurance. When it comes to the non-life, the agents sell about 32% of non-life. Brokers are companies. Remember from the earlier pronouncement that I made, brokers are companies. They sell 34% of the non-life and 6% of the life. So you see that the brokers play a very major role in the distribution of insurance, and we will understand or we will see the significance of this when we begin to talk about the impact. And in terms of geographical distribution, you can see that 58% of the life business and 84% of the non-life business is still concentrated around the Greater Accra region. So you see, when there was the partial lockdown in the Greater Accra and the Greater Kumasi area, you can understand what this meant for the insurance companies. Okay, so let's make some progress and see how the economic impact affects the insurance company. So the figures from the ministry and some reports I have seen say that the GDP, growth rate, which was targeted at 6.8%, is going to slow down to about 1.5%. What this means is that the growth of the economy is going to slow down. Insurance follows the economy. When the economy is growing, insurance grows. Because when the economy is growing, it means that existing businesses are expanding. It means new ones are coming up. It means more people are getting employed, and these create insurable risks. So, but when the economy slows down or contracts, it has the reverse effect. So you can imagine the impact on insurance. You see, the closure of the borders will significantly affect imports. And the marine business is directly based on import. These are goods that are imported, cargo that is imported into the country. So when the borders are closed, or the closure of the borders, which actually happened, is going to affect the marine business to some extent. A lot of industries, sectors have been affected by the COVID, but especially you can talk about the hospitality sector or industry, which has almost completely shut down. You can talk about the airline industry, which has almost completely shut down, and the tourism industry as well. So what it means is that the corporate businesses from these sectors, insurance companies are going to lose out on them. And then most of the employees who work in this sector, most probably some of them have lost their jobs, others are not getting their incomes as they should. And these are the things that promote effective demand for insurance. Then there's decline in trading volumes and values, and you can see it all around. Everywhere you can see the decline in the volumes. And as I said, as the volumes grow, insurance follows the economy. So as the volumes decline, of course, the insurance volumes are going to decline. We have also been told it's probable that the flow of foreign direct investment is going to contract. So foreign direct investment come in to set up new businesses. They come to set up businesses, they come to set up ventures, they come to expand new ones. So when there's a contraction, when businesses come in and set up, they create insurable risks, which the insurance companies insure. So when foreign direct investment contracts, you can imagine the impact that it will have. And then of course, the impact on commodity prices. There's a mixed impact here. We all know that the crude oil prices have fallen very sharply. And now Ghana is on the other side. Now we are producers. And so some parties, some entities which were coming to start oil production have put the production on hold. Once it is on hold, it means that everything, including the insurance, is on hold. So you can see how these impact. So briefly, these are the economic impact that also impact on the insurance. Now let's go and see how directly this impact on the insurance companies and their operations. So let's go to the next slide, and next slide that says impact on industry. Okay, so we will look at this in about under 3 subheadings. So we'll look at the impact on sales and revenue. We will look at the impact on claims, and we'll look at the impact on expenses. There's generally a slowdown in economic activity. And as I said from the beginning, insurance follows the economy. And so once economic activity has slowed down, it means business slows down for insurance. It becomes difficult for insurance to get business to grow their volumes. The other one is the restrictions in movement and social distancing. And this is where the significance of agents come in. As I was telling you from the beginning, insurance, it is said, is sold and not bought. People go out there to sell insurance. And these are mainly the agents. As you saw at the beginning, agents sell about 63% of life business and about 34% of non-life business. Now, the social distancing, there's restriction in movement, and it makes face-to-face interactions quite difficult. And so this is impacting rather negatively on the sale of insurance. Of course, during the partial lockdown, some of them still are. A number of the branch offices and customer services centers of insurance companies closed down just to minimize the contact and to minimize the risk of infection. And these affect the generation of sales and volumes. These factors make it difficult for the insurance companies to renew policies. You know, insurance policies are usually annual policies and they are renewable. And so when they expire, they have to be renewed. Under these conditions, it becomes difficult to get clients to renew. It becomes difficult to actually acquire new businesses because, as we can see, economic activity has slowed down. The other impact that we have seen, people are reducing their scope. So a very typical example, people are now changing their comprehensive motor insurance to third party, just so they can keep things up. And this also affects. In terms of claims, we can talk about difficulties in physically inspecting and assessing damages. Claim processing is quite a complex process, and it requires on-site inspection, assessment, and a lot of interaction. And under the conditions, the current conditions, this is quite difficult, especially during the lockdown. It's still not completely gone away. Initially, there were fears of surge of death claims. When we saw the figures from Italy and the other places, there were fears that if this gets here, there will be a surge in deaths, and therefore the death claims could go up. But God has been good to us somehow. Our death rate has been quite low, and so that has not quite materialized. The fear, though, is that if the economy goes ahead to contract as is projected, as the signs are showing, it will generate a lot of problems for the life companies. Already, you can see a lot of workers have been laid off of the hardly hit industries, which we talked about. In fact, most workers in the hospitality and the tourism industry have been laid off, and most teachers and workers in private schools have been laid off. Now, when people are laid off and are not getting their regular monthly salaries, they look around, what can we get? So what will happen is that if they have insurance policies, they go and surrender these policies, or they go and withdraw their policies. So if this is done on a large scale, you see that there's a run on especially the life insurance companies, very high levels of surrenders and withdrawals. And that is something that if the contraction becomes very significant, we fear might happen to the life industry. But we live in hope, and we see how that goes. Now, in terms of expenditure, insurance companies have had to incur unplanned expenditure, providing personal protective equipment for staff and to protect their customers, and to provide logistics for working from home, which probably were not planned for. And if you couple this with a possible dip in the premium income, we can project that this may affect profitability and the ability of the insurance companies to comply with financial soundness requirements if things don't improve sooner rather than later. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. So these are apparently not all the impact. In fact, some investment asset values have fallen. We know that the Ghana Stock Exchange Index has fallen. The prices have gone down. The bond prices have gone down. The Euro bonds and the other bond prices have gone down. Some landed properties prices have gone down. And because of fair valuation, these will affect the balance sheet of insurance companies that we worry about. And of course, the operational and the logistics issue, these will affect the accounting and therefore the regulatory reporting of insurance companies. There are deadlines, that statutory deadlines they have to meet in submitting the audited account and submitting their prudential returns and other reports. And especially because of the lockdown and the slowdown of activities, these are delayed. These are not expected. They have happened. They have actually delayed. And we will see how the industry and the regulator has responded to some of these issues as we go along. So let's move on and see. So let's look at the impact on the regulation. Regulation has also been impacted, as you can see from the screen. First of all, a very important aspect of regulation is the on-site inspections, where the regulators visit the insurance companies to have interactions with them and to inspect, review documents, talk to people, assess risks, assess mitigation measures, their effectiveness, and review board decisions. Now, the lockdown and the restrictions have disrupted these, and these are very important part of the regulation. And we need to find alternatives. Again, when it comes to the responses, I will talk about how we have dealt with this. Now, there are for those of you who are aware, you also know that the regulator announced some new minimum capital requirements, and of course, this will be affected. The pandemic is going to affect the deadline for implementation. There are a number of industry capacity building activities and consultations that were all called off. Alternatives are now being found to hold them. And of course, some of you must have also heard about the motor insurance database. There were stakeholder sensitizations and public education on its benefits and how the society, generally individuals, can benefit from it. All these were disrupted by the COVID. So let's look at how the industry has responded so far, and how the regulator has also responded to that. So can we look at the industry responses? Next slide, once again.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, all right. So at the very onset, the regulator, the National Insurance Commission, required all insurance companies to prepare, update, activate their business continuity plans, and this was done. And I wouldn't say it has taken away the problems, but it has helped them to respond, minimize disruptions, or reduce them, if I can use that word. Maybe the biggest reaction has been the alternative distribution channels. As you can see, because of the restrictions in movement and requirement for social distancing, the major distribution channel, which is the tied agent, is becoming, in fact, has become a problem. And so insurance companies are quickly switching to develop alternative, and I must say, digital distribution channels. So a number of them have developed apps where you can access their services and buy their product and apply for your claims and make your complaints. Some have developed apps, some have developed web-based portals where you can go, and some have developed USSD shortcodes for those who don't use smartphones so that they can all reach them. And some of the insurance companies have also provided free COVID-19 riders for their customers. So I know a number of insurance companies who say that, okay, so if you have a policy with us, we are giving you a free COVID-19 rider. And the scope slightly differs from one company to the other, but basically that is what has been done. And then there has been an urgent drive for digitization. I think this is something that even before COVID was becoming quite a big issue, because the entire world is digitizing. Everything is getting digitized. And so there was the drive for digitization, but COVID has come to make it even more urgent. There is the need to digitize the entire insurance service delivery. As we all know now, we can sit in the comfort of our homes and our offices, transfer money, make payments, receive money. Insurance there's now an urgent drive to get there as well. People should be able to access insurance services digitally. And so that is another impact that we can talk about. How has the regulator responded to some of these things? So at the onset, as I said, the regulator required all insurance companies to prepare, to update, and to activate their BCPs and actually send copies, and where interactions had to take place to update things and to refine them, this was done. New protocols for on-site inspections have been put in place. Basically, a lot of the work is going to be done here at the offices of the commission, and where insurance companies have to be visited, it will be to do specific things or to talk to specific people or to avoid as much as possible to minimize the face-to-face contact to the barest minimum or necessary so that we can achieve the objectives. Electronic insurance databases, again, are things that the regulator is resorting to. Even though the motor insurance database was done before the outbreak of the COVID, it came in very handy, especially during the lockdown, because insurance companies, insurance brokers could all sell insurance without going out there to meet people, to go to their offices. They could actually access the motor insurance database and issue their policies, issue their electronic stickers. Apart from the motor insurance database, the NIC is working on a marine database, and is also, there are plans to implement a claims and complaints management system, which will also make it possible for the public to digitally make their complaint and receive help. In terms of the industry capacity building programs and the consultation activity, digital options are being explored to do them. And of course, there have been extensions in the deadline for the submission of prudential and statutory returns so that companies can cope and submit and the regulator is looking into the deadline for meeting the new minimum capital requirement. This is something that is still ongoing. No new announcement has been made, but there's a look into that issue, and I'm sure the regulator will respond to that as soon as it becomes clear. So in short, these are what I can say about what impact of COVID has been so far and what the responses are. As I said, there's an empirical research going on, and I'm sure we should be able to share the results after that, and hopefully with the public and the rest of you. Thank you, and I'm available to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andoh. We appreciate you spending time with us this evening. There are a couple of questions already on the chat forum. I'm going to read them, and then you would attempt to answer those ones first, and then we can take another set of questions. The first question says, what opportunities, what are some of the potential opportunities that have arisen from COVID-19? Potential opportunities that have arisen from COVID-19. Somebody tried to enter or answer there saying delivery services, internet service, but if you want to mention that. Somebody asked a question that I also had. When you talked about COVID-19 rider or riders, I was wondering what that is. Mark Nkrumah also wants to know, what do you mean by COVID-19 rider? I think there was something that you talked about.
Okay.
And then from Kofi Ntiamoa Frimpong, he says, do you foresee the business interruption policy tangles happening in other jurisdictions happening in Ghana? In other words, there are business continuity tangles happening in other jurisdictions. What do you think about these in Ghana? His second question says, in other jurisdictions, motor policy holders are getting some refund for driving less. Should this start happening in Ghana? So this year I've driven my car for probably just 20% of the time rather than the usual, and then you charge me comprehensive throughout. Should I get some money back? I don't want to talk about money back because there's a lot of questions for money back from students. So I don't want to talk about that. And then Dr. Chasando says, the police at the checkpoints don't seem to know about the new motor insurance database. What steps is the commission taking to educate the police about the new motor insurance database? And then from Emmanuel Otin to 4, given the impact of COVID-19 on many businesses and the economy as a whole, are you considering the extension of the deadline for all companies to meet the minimum capital requirement of 50 million? A lot of questions. You are that's exciting, right?
Okay.
You probably can take them now, and then we will come to the second set, beginning from Kanawi. Yes.
Okay. So potential opportunities. I can think about development of digital distribution channels. This is an opportunity to develop them because even without COVID, the world is getting, the financial world is getting digitized. Everything is getting digitized now. And so that is an opportunity that has come for them to do this. And then product development, looking at what has happened and some of the problems that have come up, maybe with some research into which of the risks are insured. It is not every risk that is insurable. So insurance companies can look into the risks that have come up and be able to come up with which risks are insurable, on which risks do we have data or can we get data and develop products to mitigate those risks. So those may be some of the advantages that we can look at. Now, when we say a rider in insurance, it is like a top-up. When you buy a policy and it says the policy does ABC, you can buy a rider. A rider is an addition, a top-up to the policy to cover you for something that ordinarily wouldn't be covered in the policy that you have. So when you say COVID-19 rider, it means that these insurance companies have sold some insurance policies to their policyholder that cover them against certain risks. Those risks may not specifically include if they are hospitalized or that you die from COVID-19. But because COVID-19, they have added those risks to them that should something happen to you, should you be hospitalized or should you die out of COVID-19, this is how much we will give you. It is a rider that they are giving to the policyholders for being their customers. And that is what a rider means. BI tangos, BI means business interruption. And business interruption basically means that you take an insurance policy, and if something interrupts your business and you are unable to make your sales or your profit as expected, you get compensated. This is a rather long, this could be long and complex, but basically what happens is that business interruption, the basis of business interruption is a property damage. So if you have a factory or a property that you use for your business or something, and you take fire insurance to protect that policy, and then fire destroys that property and it therefore interrupts your business, then the business interruption jumps in. This is the traditional source for business interruption. I must say that from there, people have developed what I may call some secondary business interruptions where they can define their own interruptions and do it. Would we have tangos here in Ghana? It depends on what kind of business interruptions we have. And I don't think that we have so many of the complex kinds of business DI policies that you have out there. But I can't predict that for sure. But whatever it is, we wouldn't, even if it happens, it may not be on the scale that you find out there, because most of the VI policies here, I can tell you, are the traditional ones that are on property damage and therefore a pre-existing fire policy. Refund for driving less, I don't think so. It's not something that has come up. It has not come to our attention now. We we haven't been able to make any assessment to see whether people are driving 10% less or 15% less or 20% less. So that hasn't come up yet, and we haven't dealt with it. Police don't know about MID. That may be true. We started some sensitization programs for the police. We did that, we finished that in Accra. But the very Monday that our team landed in Kumasi, that was the day the president announced the lockdown. And so the team had to come back. So if you would see in my impact analysis, I mentioned stakeholder sensitizations that have been disrupted. This was part of it. And so I would not say, or it may be true that there are some policemen who don't have enough information about the MID yet, but that is the cause. We are trying to look for alternatives to get these sensitizations done so that enforcement and compliance will be improved. Extension of minimum capital requirement deadline. I did say that the NIC is looking into that, and so no word yet, but the NIC is looking into that and will come out with something. But as at now, there isn't anything.
Thank you very much. The next set of questions begins with Knawi. He says, with respect to economic impact, don't you think that the insurance industry has gained from vehicles and airline owners, though they may not have the potential to gain new clients? For instance, commercial and private vehicle drivers renew their insurance on yearly basis. Are there future laws for vehicle and airline operators in any pandemic situations since they pay in advance? I'm not sure whether you understand the question.
No, I don't understand the question. Clarify.
Yeah, so I was also struggling to understand. So I guess that what he's saying is that they pay you in advance, and then something happens, they don't get to work. So perhaps close to the question about whether or not they will get some refund, because they paid for the insurance in advance, and then there is something happening and we aren't working. So cashback sort of question, I guess. The other one says, with respect to the slow movement in the industry, where does that leave final year students reading insurance? Oh my God, and their national service opportunities within the industry. Okay, so and I can see a student struggling to find a job there. And that's part of the impact on students' graduation, right? So, what is the impact of COVID-19 on the new insurance bill? Is it likely to be passed this year? And then from Tevia Ben, it says, proactive regulatory intervention in considering review of the timeline for compliance with the new MRC. Shows the regulator has considered the potential of lower profit resulting from COVID-19 impacting the ability of insurers to meet the new minimum capital requirement from audited profits. Great presentation, thank you. So this is almost like a comment, commending you for your already anticipation and therefore working towards that. By your studies, why do we have more than 80% of the insurance business in Accra? What is the NIC doing to get business from the other regions, especially since you have life insurance taking over non-life insurance? And of course, I would add a bit of my question there. Agric is still a dominant contributor to both our GDP and our employment sector. Why are you not, ensuring agriculture and therefore spreading out of Accra, because then you would be able to cover the other parts of the region? And then two, we have a largely informal sector. How has COVID-19 impacted the industry's portfolio towards the informal sector? Those are my questions as well. And then I have Tanko Galaxy A70. Risk governance became prominent with the advent of the global financial crisis. Do you see risk governance being given more attention of COVID-19? And then
I didn't hear the last question you read. Can you go through that again? And can you ask everybody to mute their speakers?
So let me try and mute everybody. So let me get to the let me try and read everybody. Sorry, I'm getting. Hey, Abraham, now you did one. How are you? Okay, so let me stop sharing and then I can now control.
Okay.
So, okay, now good. The gentleman has also kept quiet, so it helps
good.
us. So,
good.
Yeah. So the other question was that risk governance became prominent with the advent of global financial crisis. Do you foresee risk governance being given more attention as a result of COVID-19? What longer-term trend might COVID-19 outbreak serve to usher in for the future? Would you say insurers have COVID-19 covered? In other words, and then this one says, Ben again says, the protection of income of the Ghanaian breadwinner, the worker, has become more critical than before with COVID-19. Insurance cover for the frontline worker is a great initiative. Can you do more to promote the need for compulsory insurance of income of workers in Ghana? This is a very important question. And I 2 days ago, we were having a conversation about businesses that take credit from banks and microfinance companies. And the question was, do we have all of these businesses insured, such that if their businesses had issues, the company giving them loans will not bear all the fallout from the problems that occur. Joshua Makubu says, to what extent is the NIC willing to make data available for the academia for purposes of research, especially data that border on regulation? Joshua, you are a PhD student, you want free data. Okay, all right, we'll see what happens. Please, what kind of insurance would you advise companies to go for, especially with this pandemic, to be able to stay in business in future if it reoccurs? So those are questions that we have, and then I will open for 1 or 2 more audio or voice questions, and then we would bring it to a close. So, Mr. Andoh, it's over to you.
Yes. Okay. So the first one, I'm sure he's still talking about the cashback for driving less, and I addressed that before. We have not been able to make any empirical research into that to find out whether people are driving more, driving less, and there may be more to it than that. And so, well, simply put, that is something that we have not looked at. It hasn't come up for us to look at, and so we will cross that bridge if we get to it eventually. Final year students, what happens to them? Let's pray that things improve, that business. The president has put out some stimulus package out there. There are a number of efforts to reactivate the industry. As one of my former bosses used to say, we live in hope. We just hope that the economy will pick up and you will find a job, God willing. You will be fine. The industry will pick up, things will pick up, and it won't be like this forever. New insurance bill, work is going on the new insurance affected by COVID. Work is still ongoing. Whatever has to be done is going on. So the new bill is in progress. I've talked about the new minimum capital requirement already, that NIC is looking into it and will come out with some pronouncement later. Why do we have 80% of business in Accra? I wish I could explain, because this is where all the businesses are, all the factories, all the companies, all the insurance companies have their headquarters in Accra. All the things that you want to do, you find them in Accra. I think that is how we have built the nation. And so it will be good for us all to look out to spreading out so that we can find some other things around the countryside. Agric insurance. Yes, agric insurance is very important and it is on our agenda. In fact, the Alliance for Green Revolution for Africa, AGRA, an institution that our own Kofi Annan helped to set up, has sponsored some work that will come up with a proposed national agricultural insurance policy. If the government adopts and implements it, it's supposed to make agricultural insurance affordable and available to our small-scale farmers. I must say that agric insurance is quite expensive because, as insurance people will say, it is catastrophic, and therefore it is expensive. And there is a way of going about it. In most economies where agric insurance has strongly supported agriculture, it has had active support from government. And so there are some policy decisions that need to be made on this. Why agric insurance is catastrophic is this. If you insure, say, motor vehicles or say houses, if you insure, say, 1,000, you may have 10 or 100 or 150, say, burning down in a year. Okay, so that is fairly predictable. If you insure 1,000 farmers and there's a drought, all the 1,000 farmers are coming for a claim. So you see where it becomes, and so it becomes expensive. And that is why in countries where it has survived and flourished, it has had support. So there's this policy that is going to be proposed, and hopefully if it is approved and adopted, we should be able to extend the needed, appropriate, affordable insurance to especially our small-scale farmers spread all around the country. Informal sector impacts. Apart from the general issues that I've been through, I'm not aware that there are any specific impact on the informal sector. Of course, we have a very vibrant, inclusive insurance regime here in this country. Some people call it micro insurance, and we have it, and it's a very vibrant and active one. And a lot of our informal sector operators have these products. There are risks that are covered and risks that are not covered. I am not, as at now, aware of any peculiar impact on that sector as at now.
Okay. Risk
Governance was a big issue even before COVID. Risk governance is always necessary. It is part of, in fact, it is one of the big things that we need to deal with, especially in the financial services sector. And so work has been going on that even before this, and it is going to continue. Longer term trend that COVID ushers in terms of insurance specifically, maybe looking at digitization will be something that we can talk about. There are other social trends that we can talk about specifically in respect of insurance. Maybe digitization is one thing that needs to be looked at. That will, of course, will bring it in. Income, there is the need. There will be some types of compulsory insurances in the bill. They will protect income, but it is not all it won't cover all circumstances. For example, if somebody loses his job, there has to be a specific product for that. But the compulsory insurances will cover, say, group life. So if somebody gets injured or is incapacitated or dies, let's say what happened at Circle in 2015, was it 2015 when there was that leakage and inferno?
I think 2016, yeah. I think
16, okay. And then what happened at Atomic Junction with the gas explosion? The same thing happened around the trade fair. Innocent citizens going about their lives were affected. Some of them died. Some of them have been incapacitated. If we make some kind of insurance compulsory for these entities, for these gas filling stations and other places, these victims innocent victims will not always have to wait on somebody's benevolence to survive. At least there will be some arrangement. Even if it is not enough, there will be something for them. And so in order to protect these innocent third parties, some compulsory insurances for specific institutions and locations will be considered in the Act to cater for this. I also know that most financial institutions who lend to individuals have something called credit life, and it's an insurance cover. But there are things that it covers. It is default caused by certain things. It's not all default. So if you are, say, fired from your work and you default, it may not be something that will be covered. There are things that are covered under credit life and things that are not covered. And so we need to. Regulatory data for academic purposes, I'm afraid. Regulatory data is a very confidential information, and usually under usual circumstances, we will not share that kind of data. There is published data like the financial statement of financial institutions, which is public information, which we can share. But the regulatory data, I'm afraid we will not be able to share for research purposes. I don't know whether I left something out.
I think you have done well. Let me see. There is the student that asked about a job.
Yeah.
Somebody has posted an offer. So somebody from Teria Ben Ahmed says, Metropolitan Life Insurance offers 2 opportunities for national service personnel. The student who asks about national service should contact us on, then the telephone number is there. So if you are still here, the gentleman that asked the question about national service, please check on the chat forum and copy the number for Metropolitan Life Insurance 0244132080, and then be in touch with them. You probably just secured yourself in a placement for national service, and perhaps if you work hard, you probably will get a job. The last question that I want you to, before we let you go, I appreciate that you have something else to, some more additional responsibility elsewhere. It says, are there indemnity insurance products for health professionals and health institutions in Ghana? If not, would you recommend that to the insurance companies? And then why can't we expand tax insurance in every region in Ghana? Oh, sorry, why can't we expand index insurance?
Okay.
Why can't we expand index insurance in every region in Ghana? These are the last 2, and then we will let you off. I think that there's been a very animated discussion, so please.
Okay, so indemnity, the person is talking about professional indemnity for health professionals.
I think so.
These are products that are available. They are available, but as at now, they are not compulsory. But they are available. Some health facilities do have them. So there are some health facilities where doctors and nurses who work there actually do have these professional indemnity, so that if there is negligence, if there's a mistake on their part, these will help them out. There are insurance companies that have these products available. And so if there are any health facility that wants this kind of insurance, they can contact any insurance company and it will be made available. They are there, they are available. Index insurance, yes, there's index insurance. As I said, there are issues around the affordability. There are issues around the scaling up, which the proposed policy that I talked about is trying to improve. But there are weather index insurance products. There are yield index insurance products that the Ghana Agricultural Insurance Pool sells. So there's something we call the Ghana Agricultural Insurance Pool that sells agricultural insurance to farmers, and it currently has agricultural index insurance product that it sells. And so if you are interested, farmers who are interested, I could connect you to the managers of the pool, and they can buy index product from them anywhere in the country. They are not restricted to certain regions. Anywhere in the country that you are, once your farm or your agricultural business is insurable, you should be able to procure it.
Okay, so Letitia asked a question that I thought we glossed over. She says, what insurance, what kind of insurance would you recommend to companies to go for, especially with this pandemic, to be able to stay in business in future if it reoccurs? Briefly, sir.
That is interesting. That is interesting because these pandemics don't mimic each other. They don't repeat all the time. You don't know what next time, what may come next. But life insurance covers for staff will be available, and the hybrid types of business interactions will also be a good way to go. I've already said about the issues about the traditional DI policy, which is traditionally based on fire policy for property damage. But I believe that there can be hybrid DI policies that can be developed for other circumstances. But that is work that needs to be done, and for appropriate pricing and underwriting procedures to be adopted, hopefully to cater for any such things in the future.
Mr. Andoh, Michael Andoh, we want to say a big thank you for stopping by, and I know how this has been tough to get you because one, it was at a very short notice, beginning from last Tuesday, so you virtually had only one day to think through this and to do this presentation. We are sorry for that, but we are excited. You see the conversation ongoing shows that this is an extremely interesting presentation. You have been very excited about it. I want to thank you so much for making time to stop by, and then we can release you now so that we can continue with the conversation. And so we will get back to you with our thank you letter, but thank you for sharing knowledge this evening. And that's what we've been seeking to get this seminar series to do, to have and to be able to shape discourse. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you. So the next presenter is somebody that I have grown to know, but only briefly and at a very short distance. Professor Javed Ghulam Hussein, and my own supervisor in the University of Manchester was Hussein. So when I saw it, I straight away got attracted. We haven't met yet personally, but we have established some very good working relationship already. So Professor Hussein is a professor of entrepreneurial finance and a researcher.
I told you about it.
Is a professor of entrepreneurial finance and is currently the research coordinator at the Department of Accounting and Finance at the Birmingham City University in the UK. He has a PhD from the University of Birmingham into money, banking, and finance, and is currently a professor of entrepreneurial finance in Birmingham, where he's taught since the 1990s. In fact, that's so many years of experience. Before joining Birmingham City University, Professor Hussein was a financial analyst with the Forward Trust Group, now a subsidiary of HSBC. And prior to that, he worked for the Birmingham City Council. He has keen interest in entrepreneurial finance, entrepreneurship, and small business finance. He has 28 years or more of experience in many aspects of enterprise and entrepreneurship, including policy research, practical support, education, and microfinance. He has published widely in international renowned journals and has presented in numerous conferences. He has supervised and examined PhDs across his interest areas in a number of universities, and he is a member of the editorial team for a number of international journals. He has extreme and extensive experience of providing consultancy and has served as advisor for public and private sector organizations. Professor Hussein is going to be talking to us this evening on some very interesting conversation about entrepreneurial learning in teams for engaged scholars development. Professor Hussein, welcome to Ghana. I'm sorry that we are bringing you to Ghana during COVID-19 period. I promise you, I owe you one to bring you to Ghana physically. But today, it is for you to share with us experiences of entrepreneurial learning. You are welcome to do your presentation.
Well, unfortunately, we couldn't make it then, but at least we made it in.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, I have a fond interest and a lot of sort of colleagues from Ghana, and in particular, I think I have supervised about 4 PhDs from Ghana.
Oh, okay.
3 working in UK and 1 working in
yeah.
part of the world. Yes.
You are just like my supervisor. Now he's searching for Ghanaian students to supervise. So we will bring you more PhD students.
Why not? Why not? I mean, thank you very much again for inviting me. And let me just put up the PowerPoints.
Right.
And then we can, hopefully I should be able to do this. I have opened my PowerPoint, so I thought I can straight.
Yes, so there's a green on the bottom of the screen, there's a green that says share screen. Great.
Can you see that?
Yes, absolutely. Now, if you can project it.
How do I project it? Just
there's down there. There's an icon on or on top there. It says slideshow. And if you like to go to the top of the screen where it says slideshow, can you see that? After animation, transition animation, then it has slideshow.
Actually, I have the slide on my side. However, I can't really see the.
Okay, so it's okay. I think this is, but we are still able to see, so it's fine. You can go on with this.
If you're able to see, then oh yes, I have got it here. Sorry. Yeah, that's good. Better.
Exactly. Great.
Yeah. Well, yes, we got there eventually. Well, thank you very much. I think it's good to have so many colleagues there, attending. We have been organizing the webinars, sort of a seminar series at Birmingham City University, and we have 30, 40, but I just saw earlier you had about 83. Well done to all who have made it.
Yeah.
And it's really refreshing to see so many of you. I mean, it was a rather short notice, so I couldn't really do something substantive on COVID.
Right.
Also, we have just started a project to look at the impact of COVID on the sustainability of ethnic minority businesses in UK. So we actually conducted the field work. So hopefully we'll report that research in the near future too. This particular work, which I'm going to talk about, it came out of a discussion at Brunel University in London, where my colleague Nurul Russell works there. And this particular topic, we were having a discussion, and it was alleged that we academics are deliberately or unintentionally move into these ivory towers and never connect with the businesses. And as a result, we wrote a proposal, and there was some funding for that. And these 2 wonderful ladies who are from Malaysia actually spearheaded the work in Malaysia, and that's how we had the contacts, and we moved into there to do that. So Nurul, she couldn't be here, and Jen is in Malaysia at the moment, but Nurul is here in London today. I did I had a conversation with them this morning, but it would be nice to have them here too. So the motivation really is that the entrepreneurs and academics particularly, they seem to be lacking this particular relationship with the wider community and the wider industry and what we call social projects and so forth. So we actually wanted to see how actually this work could be reintegrated and see whether we do engage with the community or not, and whether our engagement is of any benefit to them and so forth. And hence the need for engaged scholar. So we really wanted to see if we can enhance and balance the academic discipline involvement in the business and industry. But also we wanted to look and find ways and means to bridge the gap between researchers and practice. And this gap, as I grew older, I realized that actually we have been too much in office and not getting out and about. And there were also little incentive for academics to prepare projects involving community audiences. So there are three sort of pull factors there. And the other big thing which actually really motivated us to move in this direction is impact. As a part of our research excellence framework, REF, now we are required to submit case studies which sort of tell us, okay, we did the research, who used it, when, and what impact it had. So now we actually beginning to relate our research and to the practice, and then demonstrate the impact. What are the consequences of that? The consequence of that is that we academics are now forced to go in that direction because there is money in it. So, for example, we can write 5-star or 3-star or 4-star papers, and we'll get a certain amount of money. But if we have a very good impact case study, our money could be in millions. So now you can see the incentive for us to really engaging with the businesses, engaging with our earlier speaker, with the, somebody was interested in data, but now you can see it. We begin to relate with them and say, hey, we're here to service something of interest to you too. So as I said before, we felt that why do academics find it challenging to be engaged scholars? Well, it's easy to sit in office. It's easy to, look around the material and put things together. But reality is something different. I mean, I just started this research project 4 weeks ago, well, 5 weeks ago, and it's so challenging to get access to businesses. It's so challenging to, I thought I knew something what was happening, but when we started to interview the businesses, they have a totally different understanding of COVID, its impact, and how they actually responding. And we thought there'll be passive takers, but businesses have demonstrated, the one we interviewed, they're very reactive, innovative, responsive, and they have moved on. And we think they're still there on, close the door and went home. So we academics, as I said earlier, are too much rely on theory and less on practice. And here we really need to establish a reconnect with this one. So we seem to be fixated with how we academics work, but we really need to show that actually we not only know our discipline, or we have expertise in the discipline, but we're able to relate and work with others too. So this vision that we academics work in silo, to some extent is valid, to other extent is questionable, but the funding stream in the UK has definitely changed our perception, changed the way we actually we respond to it. Let me just give you an example. Currently, with a few colleagues from Ghana, we're putting together a research application, funding application, to examine the impact of diaspora on the businesses in Ghana and how we can reconnect them. Whether we're successful or not, at least we are thinking, to relate, say, well, we're not living in silo, we're actually looking for partnership, trying to reach out to different stakeholders, try to reach out to industry and community and see what positive change we can actually bring for all and not for just our students. Students are very important, and of course they're so dear to us, but we really need to bring our knowledge from community into class. So that linkage we feel is calls for some sort of examination, and that led to us to look at this engaged scholar. So we try to distinguish engaged scholar from non-engaged scholar. What do we mean by engaged? Is the intention or reason behind, what are the intention reason behind the research actions? Why they do it? To get a chair in a professorship, or actually they really want to bring a positive change in the community or in the discipline or whatever they're trying to do. So we basically set out to say, how can we find a way to help academics to unlearn? Okay, we actually quite good in learning. What we really interested was to actually see how we can unlearn what we know. We unlearn what we have picked up from books and unlearn from published papers and so forth, and say, let's relearn the way businesses operate. How do they think? How do they reimagine a new world out there? So what we're really saying here, the research, while we're doing this, the research has shown that academics are still struggling to practice and support this sort of engaged scholarship with the outside world. And the literature review suggests that actually we really need to go into a different phase, and that is team entrepreneurial learning. And that actually gives sort of validity to our in this inquiry. So we moved on to consider how can entrepreneurial learning in teams be used to rejuvenate academics as engaged scholars. So let's not work independently. Let's not sit in offices. Let's actually, well, all of us after so many years of work in academia need to be rejuvenated. So let's see how we can actually rejuvenate the academics in this way. So what we did was that we tried to bring together the team learning, how organizations such as insurance, you just mentioned earlier on, how they are responding to outside environment, how do they assimilate knowledge and institutionalize that knowledge, and how they make sense of chaos out there. That's really trying to say. And what are the coordinated actions these teams take? But at the same time, entrepreneurial learning, I mean, this has been going on for 18, 17, so forth. But it's basically, we wanted to go out and say, well, what is co-participation? Okay, what is co-participation between the academics and the community, and what the next level we can take this whole process. Within that context, so we start to look at social nature of learning, not purely, academic, but social nature of learning. And this is where, I mean, various authors have written that it's a cumulative, interactive, and public decision-making process. As a group, what we decide to learn, okay, we want to look at diaspora, population, and their action, reaction, impact. And this sort of cumulative, interactive learning or studying or making decision is really, really quite exciting. I mean, for example, just earlier on, our colleague had a very interesting sort of presentation, and there's so many insightful questions. And that's what really, makes the industry to think and so forth. And that's what we really want to achieve. So we really want to create a process of integrating and institutionalizing this sort of whole process through unlearning and also taking into account critical incidents. And for that purpose, what we tried to do was to look at a model which looks at 4 C's. And this 4C model, I'm not going to go a lot of time because you already been listening for a long time to other colleagues as well. So, but I just 4C is really looking at how we actually the group members associate with each other, and how informations are conveyed and processed, and and then you use that information to arrive at a consensus about the research question. And secondly, the second C we'll use is that how informal voluntary relationship may lead to a shared understanding from that information, and how resources of space or referrals can be used as a mode of knowledge transmission. And thereby, we can actually Moving to the coordination, where we use the structures that link together different components in the learning, teaching, and research processes. And the final one, we're basically looking at collaboration that exemplifies with the high levels of interdependency within the group and close knit relationship, which can actually lead to new innovation, new ideas, rejuvenating businesses, reconnecting communities, and re-institutionalizing the entrepreneurial spirit. For this purpose, we had a bit of money from the ESRC and the various organizations, and we actually thought we'd choose the state of Sabah. State of Sabah is in Malaysia, and it's a beautiful picture, and I thought, why not have a bit of holidays there too? So we actually got 40 academics from New Zealand, Australia, UK, Malaysia, Middle East, and Canada and US. So we really had quite a good rich, and 25 early career researchers and 10 senior academics. So this actually enables us to select 5 projects, sites which were approximately 130 to 140 miles away from Sabah. And these sites, projects are also supported by the government. So for example, we have Mulberry project, which produce these products here. And then we have Stingless Bee project. And this is a very rare honey, which actually is brought from the jungles of Borneo. And they basically reintroduce them in a setting, and then, you know, it's a natural, it has healing properties as well. And then we have the other 2 with livestock projects and banana projects to really re-energize communities to remain active, profitable, and retain population movement away from rural areas to cities. So this, we're very lucky to actually have access to these 5 projects. So having selected these projects, we then actually went through 3-stage, 4-stage processes. We divided the participants in groups of 5, and we provided them some information. And remember, there are academics. Every group has 1 or 2 practitioners, and we are early career researchers, a very senior research mentor. And we provided some information about a project, and they had to come out with some research questions. Okay, and they're very quick. Academics are, you know, very, very dynamic. They came out with some research questions which they thought they can actually derive based on their experience, knowledge, and taking individual perspective and the group perspective. And they worked very hard for the whole day, and they came up with some sort of research questions based on assumption, preconceived ideas. And here, the other big thing I must mention is that the background they were bringing from the developed countries like, you know, UK or, for example, the New Zealand and Australia, are also actually quite a interesting sort of, they thought they knew everything. We know the solution for these developing countries, and that's what they need. After this deliberation of the day, the beneficiary joined, the next beneficiary are the head person from the project. He joined the next day to answer the questions. So that's where actually things become quite interesting. Here, in the second process, where they came to provide the solution, let me just go back, sorry, to stay here for a little while. Once they start providing solutions, there are such questions which these academics came up with, they begin to crumble. They were not realistic. And they were really, the beneficiary, the head of the project, actually gave them more information, which actually they thought they do not really need. So for example, stingless bee honey, the problem was the young population was actually leaving to cities. And the population decline led to, decline in economic activity, decline in tourism, and the whole process was unbundling in this case. So here, the senior academics and the early career researchers actually were challenged. How come they know so much, or telling they believe, how come they know so much without really exploring more deeply? That was a bit of a shock. Then what we did was, in stage 2, we actually took these researchers to the site to become, so here, after they revisited, got information, looked at the question, there were heated arguments and whatever, then we took them to actually the field, in the field. And in this field, these pre-selected projects actually providing them an environment within which to observe what is happening. Where this is where we challenge the participants to develop research questions again, in light of what is relevant to these communities. Of course, within their teams and with their beneficiaries. So they spend a couple of days living with the community, living in their homes, sharing their food, and basically a whole day trying to explore different way of their lives operates. So the third stage, again, we sent the participant out into the beneficiaries community for a unique local experience to process their environment and basically report what is happening there. So actually, again, we are challenging their perception. We're trying to unlearn what they know and produce a more relevant and impactful research proposal. We wanted them to come up with a proposal, and we really wanted them to have an impactful research proposal, not academic, but impactful. Here, the impact was the major sort of derivation, because we have to benefit, because we're going to write a case study for our ref. So the fourth stage, you brought them back in, and we actually let them loose in the groups for 2 days. And these teams were asked to produce a research proposal that will enable them to win a pot of money for their beneficiary, the projects. So they had to pitch for funding by using their revised proposal, in which they have come up with some solution, and they actually wanted to support those enterprises. During this whole process, the focus was on interdisciplinary collaborations. We had engineers, we had academics, we had entrepreneurs, interdisciplinary collaboration, industry partner engagement. That's where we brought industry in as well. And that uniquely incorporates the additional aspect of team entrepreneurial learning. In this context, what we did was we provided a first-hand experience of research challenge, not while you're sitting in an office writing a paper based on somebody else's information, but your own little insight into what is happening there. So this whole sort of process, I can extend, but I don't know how long I have got left.
No, so you've done.
Yeah. Let me go wrap around in 5 minutes.
Please go ahead. Yes.
So we really want to, bring research live for academics and say to them, whatever you have learned, whatever you have been teaching, you ask yourself, is this relevant to today's contemporary environment? Is it, when was the last time you went there, and what is exactly what you're going to take back to the classroom and teach the new emerging entrepreneurs? So we really want to ask them why all this matters. For example, at the moment we are teaching online and to students, and I just cannot demonstrate to them the same level of enthusiasm, the interactivity, the taking feedbacks and so forth. So is our education purely a one-way transmission, or there's a reactiveness coming to this? So we're really looking for developing impactful academics. So if you want to see, I'm in this picture here, in this. So we really want to bring impactful academics, where we have an empathy for the community stakeholders that lead to beneficiary-led research proposals. So it's actually, let's turn the table. Let's reverse the role a little. Let us ask the industry, the commerce, the communities to basically give us the ideas what they would like us to look into. So also we're looking at really a genuine sustainability aspect of co-creation between team members through the giving them this experience, we're giving them this experiential learning approaches. And then we actually bring in, aim is to develop or at least encourage changes to individuals' mindset, behavior, and research practice, which leads to a more impactful way of conducting research, but also bring this research back into classroom. So why it matters, we said, is because of those three reasons. And the TEL experience increases the rate of post-workshop collaboration, which we found. We're still working with colleagues in New Zealand. We're still working colleagues with Malaysia. We're still working with some colleagues in Australia. So this community approach is much more rich for all of us. And hence, academics become aware that investing their time in working collaboratively with other academics and industry partners actually is a beneficial to all of us. So I'll conclude here. You have listened to me for long enough. So what we're really saying is that engaged scholar is much more worth more. That's what we really say, is much more worth more. And therefore it's worthwhile investing in engaged scholar activity, project, and so forth. That, however, what we found is not many research that look into this, really consider these issues. And we found that academics are more aware of how their research can contribute to society, but they're actually not going that extra mile. They're not really saying, okay, let's go and see what really happens. And I was in Indonesia a few years back, and we looked at microfinance. And really, it was quite a joy to see how academics work one day a week with the community, supporting their activities and moving them out of poverty into economic engagement. So we also have, more, we were saying that if you're engaged scholar, you become more enthusiastic. And you will change, your experience change in thinking, change in being more aware of external environment, and you will also respond differently to teaching approaches, and you're much more open to learning collaboratively, building empathy, and we also trying to bring about greater amount of exposure and experiences into the classroom, and making students feel that, hey, you don't look for a job. We want you to become not a job seeker. We want you to become a job creator. Okay, so this is a really, is a focus to make our students not job seekers. I have a degree, sir, can you give me a job? Here, and much more saying, hey, I can actually create a job for myself, for the community, and that will actually give us much more enriched environment to live in. And there's a new way of thinking. How do we train our academics? How we train our entrepreneurs? How do we actually link community with the academic institutions? We really want businesses to come in the university. We just set up a unit which looks at businesses have a problem, whatever sort, they can come to our university, and we actually will provide them some sort of input. And not only that one, we may allocate one of our students to work with that firm to see how they can take forward. So what final few words is that literature on entrepreneur learning has been focusing too much on entrepreneur learning. That is the key thing. And it's not taking into consideration the team activity, the learning, unlearning, and relearning, and how entrepreneurial learning happens through teams and outside environment with the connection with the entrepreneurs. Therefore, literature on entrepreneurship learning always focus on students' context. Here it is theory. That's what I'm going to teach you. There are 5 steps. You do this and this will happen. Some magically success will appear. And we're saying actually this magically success, magic success is not something by learning those 5 rote steps, but actually implementing those 5 things and see what really happened. And therefore, we said that now look into how we can train academics, educators through this immersive practice-based approach. And that's actually is where we are, and we're just writing up the paper, and hopefully we'll be putting out those papers. So we are grateful for our institutions and the funders to give us some money to really get out of offices and do some of this work. And over to you, Professor Bo.
Thank you very much, my brother. This has been so illuminating as you go on and you tell us this. I've just been thinking about how academics reacted to the new reality of the new normal of moving online to teach, and so my thinking was that, well, if we had been actually immersed and if we had been engaged with our community, we would have realized that over time,
the net
is becoming the new normal.
infection rate is
as a result of that,
not rate, but the
as a result of that, we would have been prepared much
numbers,
more
nominal figure,
than how we have been now. Now let me take you on to listen to questions and then to respond to them. I'll try and mute. There are people who are still giving us a lot of feedback here. Okay, so I think it's done. So I have a couple of questions here for you, Professor. The first one says that the academics industry players came from. The academics industry players came from diverse background. Okay, so I think the question is that in your team there were academics coming from different and diverse backgrounds. Was a language a major issue in being able to engage whilst the academics were on with this project? The second question says, Professor Hussein, in your example setup, who are the major stakeholders in the entrepreneurial learning approach? Industries, farmers, or academics? And then the third question is, which of the stakeholders is funding the researchers' proposal pitches? Is it the universities? Then the next question from Javed says, the proposals developed by the teams were they able to obtain funding to support the businesses they study? In other words, how did you get money to support? Were you able to get money to support the businesses you were studying? In other words, did you just study the businesses? Did you have to support them with funding? And how did you get that money from? Professor Dr. Danekwe says, I am curious as to how this concept will work in a corporate arena in Manchester as opposed to the rural community you experience. My colleagues, Dr. Charles Andoh and I tried collaborating with the Ghana corporate community, and it hasn't been easy. And Dr. Danekwe, that is extremely the case, that it's not easy at all. One of the things that I've been hoping to be able to do is to create internship for faculty to be embedded in companies to help them. But it will be interesting to see how the divide of the North-South openness to receiving projects such as yours. It will be good to get some feedback on that. Another questioner says, academics mostly collect data from market women and informal businesses, but publish their findings in 5-star journals and present their findings in academic seminars and conferences. These market women don't have access to these star journals and conferences. How can academics decentralize their research findings to benefit the local businesses and people from whom data is mostly collected. And I guess the sense that that is exactly what this this project seeks to outline. Now, I picked the last two questions so that you can answer. The next question says, it's been quite difficult for academics here to communicate our research work for the industry for implementation. How should we go about this? And then the question with Dr. Andoh's name is from Dan Quay. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, all right, great. So, Professor, many questions for you.
All right, there are some questions. Shall I start with the last one first, and okay. Then we work backwards if it's okay with you?
Sure, that's fine.
It's getting access to industry is a challenge for academics at large. I accept that. However, we academics have to make ourselves relevant to them, so they can actually feel that we actually providing some sort of support while we actually doing our research as well. And the example I can give you that is that this I mentioned doing a research on impact of looking at resilience of small businesses during the COVID. And here we created a sort of a relationship over time with so many businesses where we have worked in the past, and we said to them, look, we're going to take you 1 hour or half an hour or whatever time to ask some questions. But in return for that, we actually are quite prepared to look try to examine an issue or examine a problem and come up with solutions which we can give you in a short, so for example, 2-page, 3-page, and come and discuss with you. And there it is, there's something which you can do. So we actually do a research for them, really. So if they want to introduce a new product, and we say, okay, what stage you are, and a bit of market research actually. Here we can use students to do that, and they benefit from it. Whether they want to implement or not, it's their choice. But those who actually have used this, they have been quite successful, and they come back to you, and you have access to them again and again. So it's a matter of they see us initially at living a different planet than they live, and therefore they don't connect. But over time, if you remain there, actually you do get access to those people. I think the next question was that we collect data from the rural areas, from women, for example, in microfinance, and also from businesses and so forth. And actually they don't, we publish, maybe get a 3-star or 4-star journal paper. What is benefit to them? Well, one of the things which I did a paper with a colleague who's at De Montfort, Dr. Saleh. We're looking at microfinance, and what we came up with was that we begin to see there's some evidence that actually those microfinance ladies who got microfinance, they were successful. Then subsequently, they led to them to have a domestic problem, where the men folks went and had somebody else on, a relationship with them, and that's for cause a conflict. So we actually, not only that one, we use those results and then feed back to microfinance institutions in other countries as well, that actually you really need to look at collective family lending rather than individual lending to a woman, where they actually, and for example, we did another work with my PhD student. She is a lecturer in Wolverhampton University, and she looked at empowering women, how the empowering woman creates conflict within the family setting. So, yeah. So if you empower women, you're going to have problems because the men are not used to that empowerment, and they used to much more control. And again, we use that one. There's a microfinance institution in Pakistan, which is a very big one, and they actually have taken on board how we actually can lead while we're doing some sort of work with those women to resolve some of those issues. So there is a benefit there. The other benefit which I observe myself is that while you're collecting data, while you're engaging with them, you're also imparting certain amount of information to them. So my first PhD student was back in 1994. and there's a Danish aid agency, DANIDA, which actually provided funding in Uganda for the sanitary facilities and so forth. And whilst we were actually doing that research, we actually found that, you know, not only the NIDA, but also the people who are, recipients, they were actually quite enthused to learn, you know, why people are here to find out, you know, how we're benefiting. So there's an educational element there too. But I agree totally and accept, put my hands up, that the 5-star paper or 3-star paper or no star paper never gets to those people at the far end as such. Yeah. Moving on to the question of internship in companies. It is a big challenge. It is a big challenge in that really we academics, young academics are quite flexible, by the way. I mean, we have placed 1 or 2 in the Price Waterhouse in Birmingham. But for example, imagine taking me to a institution where we want to learn and ask them the question, and they're interested in doing things done and not answering my inquisitorial question and sort of getting too much distracted by me. But yes, I think that we need, the university themselves need to little enterprising. I mean, for example, my neighbor, we have what you call business incubators, where business incubators, you know, basically the new entrepreneurs can come and they have space and support and facilities, and they can use that to start up a business and then they move out. So these are incubation services and so forth. So universities in collaboration with the government could actually set up these sort of business parks or something of that kind to actually, you know, where academics can work with them and to support them. And it's a sort of substitute for internship. I think there was another question from colleagues about working in how does what we did in Malaysia will actually be replicable in Manchester arena. Actually, we did a very similar study in London. Not myself, but Russell, my co-authors, they actually worked with communities in Tower Hamlet in London. The mission was to provide them some sort of support and guidance and try to energize those people to engage with business and employment and so forth. So it's doable, but you asked the question, somebody asked earlier, where does the money come from? Here, UK at least, we actually, for the research, we got the money from Newton Fund and ESRC. Okay, that fund actually enabled us to travel there, spend time there, and so forth. And there was part of money which we actually asked them to provide us to then the successful proposal will be given those funding. I think that was not that much, it was approximately 2,000, the largest amount. And that enabled the project. I think it was stingless bee honey one. And they actually then worked with the university in Kuala Lumpur, which developed pumps to suck up the honey, and rather than damaging the whole process of the bees and so forth. And that sort of money actually helped them to mechanize and increase the production and have a more the honeybee sort of homes and so forth. So we were very fortunate in that respect, but I think now we should also look at the collaboration between the universities in developing countries and in developed countries. There are some funders who are actually funding these projects. I mean, we did apply for 2. In fact, we were looking at the what you call, I can't remember the name, it's senior citizens, basically looking at how we can use the senior citizen. There's a lot of growth in population growth in the West, where you have 60 plus in a large bundle, and we wanted to engage them with the employment, the community, so they can actually contribute something back. And in fact, Professor Baolo, I actually we submitted a bit together with Dr. Karimu.
Right, right.
Not successful, but we did. So we're saying there should be a collaboration between your countries and the universities here, where the projects can be, explored and funding available, and that can lead to more sort of activity, research, and also academically can benefit from that too. Those proposals, somebody mentioned that, were they successful to get funding? Well, actually, one of the two winners out of 5, and we gave them £2,000 each from the fund. But subsequently, I learned now that the Malaysian government have provided them some further funding to encourage people to stay there. Okay, and hence there is a government role to play here as well, and hence there's always something happening on level. So we really need to bring all the players together somehow to create this sort of dynamic research, practice, and impactful environment. I hope I answered all of them, but just in case.
Yes, you did. I see a couple of questions, but I can sum all of them up to the matter of trust. How do academics earn the trust of communities and community organizations and businesses to the level where they would open? Because the questions that I see colleagues ask relate to issue of skepticism, issues of confidence to give trust, issue of protecting data or business information. So how do academics cultivate trust to that extent where these companies are willing, either medium, small, or large companies are willing to accept academics to work with them freely? What will be your advice?
Well, the first thing is that when you're doing some PhD work, and for example, in one particular case, we had a company which was producing a particular product, which was a confidential. They didn't want to give any information to anybody because of the marketing and the patents and so forth. So this sort of scenario, our university actually, we have a ethical process form, which we have to declare what we're doing with this company and how we're going to protect the data. So when you're actually writing a proposal, we actually have a data protection, data management section. And similarly, we do that for that sort of research. In addition to that, if you're just doing some, and we actually also do the same thing, we anonymize the question. Once you collect the data, we anonymize, and those names never reappear other than some code form. However, what we find is that in UK, I'm not so well conversant with the developing countries, the companies actually began to have a long-term sort of understanding that these universities are not operating against us, but working for us. And that sort of trust enables you to get some sort of, first entry into their community, their business, and so forth. There will be those who have been through the university sector system, they're much more open entrepreneurs, and those who are actually from traditional background, they still see as an outsider, and that outsider relationship can only be negotiated and through, long-term contacts. Have I answered all that question?
Yes.
That's the only way. There's no other way. And for example, we did a paper, a sort of how banks, my first paper was how banks make lending decisions to small businesses in UK. That was in 1990. And we did that paper, and we actually interviewed the bank managers rather than the businesses. And getting access to bank managers was incredibly difficult. However, the write-up from there was, of course, anonymized, but that was used by the Lloyds Bank. They produced a guide how, to get funding from banks. So that guide then mentioned our name, and that name actually enabled us to connect with the businesses. So it's depending what sort of environment you are in.
And I would say, like you mentioned, I think one of the most critical resources academics have would be our past students and entrepreneurs who have had the opportunity to be within the university community. Yes. And that is where I am passionate about getting to know our students well. So if you talk about it, you are talking about faculty engaged with students so that they don't just come and go through here. We haven't built a relationship with them. We did not offer to support them whilst they were here. And therefore, you don't have a relationship. So you go to them, it's difficult to get access. The second thing that I think academics can do is probably to ensure that we do not look for quick fixes and quick results. It takes time to build confidence and trust. So if you waited until when your proposal was ready and you ran to them and you say you want the data today and tomorrow, it's probably going to be difficult for them to open up for you immediately. And that is why it's important to start engaging even before you start thinking about projects and what have you. So that that kind of relationship over time allows them to trust who you are, begin to know you, and know that they can actually benefit from you as well whilst you are at this. Professor Javed, Hussein, I think that this has been extremely useful addition to our conversation, especially in this day of COVID-19. Businesses are going to be looking up to us to provide them with some insight on how they can recover. I think that academics should take advantage of COVID-19 and reach out to businesses, reach out to companies, and ensure that we support especially medium and small scale enterprises so that it helps us to be able to go to them after this period and to say, hey, we are friends already. Can we go ahead and do this together? That would probably be a very important step to take. And so let me just tell our colleagues here that we are coming up with seminar series and training sessions that we intend to offer free of charge to enterprises that are run by our students and enterprises that we have had some things to deal with in the past. So in these times where things are tough for them, let's be the ones to stretch forth a certain helping hand. And I guess that will provide opportunity for them to also open to us when the time comes for us to look for some engagement relationship with them. Professor Hussein, I appreciate your time this evening. And as you can see, a lot of our people are still glued to their computers and listening very well. We appreciate this, and I guess that this is just the beginning of our engagement. I am hoping that our colleagues in Department of Finance would pick up conversations with you so that if there are opportunities for projects across the global divide, we can build teams that can win projects. Thank you very much for spending your evening with us.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm here to support any activities you're doing. And especially, we actually do have seminars on enterprises. My colleague, Mark Gilman, also does. And if you're doing anything, we're more than happy. I mean, we can't be there, but we can be online to support your activities if that's of any use. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. And I know that it's already past 9 p.m. in the UK, so that's too much time to demand of you, especially that it was so short a time to get you. We appreciate you, and on behalf of the business school, we say thank you and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our last presentation. The last presentation is going to come from our colleague, Dr. Vera Fiador. Dr. Vera Fiador is senior lecturer in the Department of Finance and is one of the very passionate ones when it comes to engagement. So she's doing a lot of things with businesses, especially for small scale businesses, and helping to provide support in terms of training and capacity building as part of her corporate social responsibility stuff. But this evening, she's talking, and she's the second lady to speak in this seminar series. So I'm excited because we get to balance the gender equation. She's talking to us about business continuity planning and turnaround strategies for COVID-19. Dr. Vera Fiador, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, and I like your hairstyle is excellent, right? So this is exciting. Let me tell all of the people there, you are not leaving until Vera is done. So Vera Fiador, please take us through business continuity planning and turnaround within the COVID-19 period. You can share your screen and then you go ahead to make your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so, thank you for the opportunity and for me to present. So, business continuity and turnaround strategies. I'm going to work from the angle of an outline where we're going to look at the contextual setting, look at some of the broad options that businesses have to stay on and continue to provide the services that we get from them. And these are broadly around the issues of business continuity, and then a bit of a brief on turnaround management. Now, in terms of the contextual setting, let me put it this way. Somewhere late 2019, a health crisis began to emerge, starting from China, the Wuhan province. And then as the health crisis began to escalate, countries began to take steps to mitigate the impact it will have on them. And mostly because there was no vaccine, no treatment plan, no protocol, the best they could start doing were some of the draconian measures like closing borders and shutting off a lot of systems like public gatherings, etc. Now, immediately that started happening, where borders were being closed, flights were being grounded, etc. Then businesses went into crisis. Crisis because there was a slump in demand. Now, because we have cases where people are not being allowed to go out, then the ordinary things that they demand on daily basis suddenly become something they don't demand anymore. And some of the areas that were most affected, you look at the airline industry, the tourism and hospitality sector, shipping almost came to a standstill, therefore affecting supply chain. So businesses even went into crisis because some of the materials, especially for those who imported, meant that they did not have the relevant materials for production. So that is where we get to this point where now for a number of businesses, staying in business has actually become a problem. Even carrying out normal day-to-day activities has become a bit of a problem. And for some, they're actually going out altogether. Some are filing for bankruptcy. We've heard cases of firms outside that have filed for bankruptcy protection. And the list goes on and on. Now, in general, you can therefore say that for businesses, in terms of continuity, to stay on for the long run, it has become a bit of a problem. So there's a threat to business continuity. Now, SMEs in particular become quite vulnerable. Now, they have become vulnerable because for the typical SME, structures and systems are not the norm. And then when you bring it back home to Ghana, where my focus really is for the interest of this seminar, we have over 90% of our businesses being SMEs. And these businesses contribute approximately 70% of the Ghanaian economy. Now, recent NBSSI data, that's the National Board for Small Scale Industries, shows that approximately 80% of these firms are made up of micro businesses, meaning that they employ typically between 1 to 5 persons, and then 10% small, and about the 1.5 to 2% are the ones that will constitute the median, which presupposes that for the larger set of businesses with our systems and typical structures, that's where our economy is grounded. In fact, that forms the backbone of the Ghanaian economy. The SMEs, should they go out of business, or should this business continuity become a mirage that they don't realize? It means our industries are going to go out of sync, and then automatically the Ghanaian economy is going to also suffer. So what it really means is that if SMEs fail to achieve continuity as a result of the COVID-19 saga, then Ghana's economy is going to really take a real hit. And that, as it is already, we are seeking to develop. We are an emerging economy. So even as we are trying to find our way, it is best if we can minimize as much as possible all negative implications for the economies. Now, when it comes to the way forward, businesses to a large extent have two broad options. There may be other options, but the main broad options here are to whether to trigger a business continuity framework or to go the turnaround route. When we talk of business continuity, because if you look at it in terms of business continuity, you're seeking to put in place the relevant systems and procedures, etc., to ensure that even as we begin to contain the COVID-19 and still look for ways around it, the businesses will continue to function. Because when they continue to function, then we'll have the economy running on its back. So business continuity seeks to ensure that we have the people, the plans, and the processes to make sure that our businesses are still functional and they continue to provide the relevant services. Now, business continuity goes a bit beyond disaster recovery, which is another frame where we seek to restore our data as a result of a disaster. That could be an IT failure, it could be a fire. So business continuity, we are going a step further, looking at the resources that we need to put up to ensure that our programs, our services, our operations continue to run, irrespective of any major interruption. Now, let me add at this point that even for most organizations, they find it almost unimportant, or they do not consider it important to make the necessary plans and procedures for potentially threatening scenarios and disasters, because the assumption is that it may never really happen. So we seem to have a view of all things could go well. So what really happens as well for the SMEs, then that one is even quite missing. You don't really find a lot of these SMEs having systems. So in order for us to look at the business continuity, a typical business continuity management situation means that you would have spent some resources, some effort prior to any disaster whatsoever to put in place preventive measures, if possible, anything to prevent the disaster from impacting you negatively. And if beyond the preventive measures, you also go ahead and put in place systems and plans to prepare in the event of the disaster. Now that's before the occurrence of the disaster. Now, after the disaster actually occurs, then you're going to trigger the response options that you have that you'd want to move on. Now, if you look closely in terms of what firms consider when they're doing business continuity, now, most firms don't have. So like the first speaker said, you find that more in the formal regulated sector. So the banking sector usually has business continuity plan, the insurance sector. So most of the financial services sectors have business. But once you begin to move away from these highly regulated industries, then business continuity becomes more like something wishful. But it becomes even more critical because a chunk of our economy is riding more on the informal sector and then also on the micro sector. So that gives us a very peculiar situation. Now, even for those who seek to do any form of business continuity planning, their focus on key issues like loss of IT. So if they're going to lose data, they are very particular. If they're going to lose their telco system, like their internet structure, their gadgets, anything that will affect communication, they get worried. Anything that would affect reputational damage, they focus on how to keep business running even in the face of reputational damage. What about loss of skills? Natural disasters, they focus mostly on floods, earthquakes, and then there's fire there up there for 3%, supply chain disruptions. Then suddenly, we are confronted with this COVID business. It's a hydra-headed monster. It shows up. What you can see from the graph I have here typically is the fact that most organizations don't seem to have room for a pandemic like COVID-19. So even for those who prepare, they seem not to have prepared for COVID-19. And so what about those who have not even prepared for any of these? And then suddenly COVID-19 shows up, and this one becomes a hydra-headed monster that seems to have so many implications. Implications in the fact that even as just like the virus itself is mutating, the implications of COVID-19 on businesses seems to be quite multifaceted. The lockdown ends up with staff not being able to come to work. So suddenly we have a case of loss of staff and loss of skills. In some cases, in trying to transition online to provide most of the services away from the office, overload on systems sometimes means that the systems begin to shut down. There are supply chains disruptions for a lot of businesses because the people who produce are unable to produce. And so suddenly we have this events that we haven't really planned for that just drops in front of us, and then you struggle to find a way out. So COVID-19 strictly, it just caught us unawares. So unlike a typical business continuity management situation where we have some kind of pre-planning and looking at options as to how we're going to respond, COVID-19 plunged us straight into an unprecedented one. We have nothing prepared for. The benefit of time for meticulous planning was missing. So now we are at the deep end, trying to figure out instant responses to a situation that is still evolving. Nobody really knows how it's going to play out. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have a serious protocol for cure. So we're just managing a few things here and there. So when you look at it critically, then you begin to wonder how this is going to work out. Now, I can say that yes, all is not necessarily lost, because at this point, even if there was no initial planning for handling COVID-19, nothing stops the average business from triggering that kind of business continuity framework. Now, business continuity, as we know, it's a risk management frame. So as you would have in a typical risk management framework, we want to identify the risk that we face. So we do a risk assessment. And then we want to quantify it in terms of its impact. So we do a business impact analysis. Now that begins to look at, so in terms of the identification, we're going to look at mission critical activities. So for every business, there are activities that are mission critical. If you fail to do them, the business goes out. And then there are other services that we align just to add on. So we got very critical, and not so critical activities. Now at this point, you want to identify the mission critical activities. So that will require some serious brainstorming on the part of businesses to identify which activities are mission critical. And then you want to look at the analytics and find out what's the maximum downtime that you can afford. There are financial implications, and there are also what non-financial implications. So what you want to do is to look at, okay, so what are the implications in terms of the impact for the business? Now, once you begin to look at the ways or the pathways by which these mission critical activities, if uncontinued, can affect the business, then you begin to generate strategic options, response options that you would want to follow through. That, okay, we can go this route or we can go that route. Having looked at the strategic options in terms of the design phase, then we go to the point of actually laying out the complete plan to aid execution, looking at the people and the processes that must run. And then, as is typical for any good management framework, we want to do some measurements, some monitoring and evaluation. Now, at this point, I must mention that in the typical setup, you'd have done the training and the testing and to maintain the system. But this will be done as is because we don't have the time to wait. So that's for the business continuity planning. So for any business that has not necessarily started, this is the time to start looking at how to continue with a business. But then even then, to be able to know whether it is time for you to actually trigger a business continuity model is to begin to ask some very hard questions. The hard questions will be whether the current business model that you run is still relevant. Can you reinitiate business without making modifications? Let's take a case of what? Restaurants and hotels, recreational sites, hospitals, schools, airlines. Can we reinitiate business without making some significant modifications? Now, it may not necessarily hold, because for some, especially for the airline, a lot of things are changing. So if you take Emirates, for example, and together with other airlines, they are beginning to change the whole model. Now, by changing the whole model, then it means that they are adding another flavor to it by going the turnaround route. Because by asking the question of whether the current business models are viable, it may emerge that no, if we are to continue with the current business model, most businesses are likely to go out because it will not fit the environment that we face. And so when you take Emirates for now, they are looking at coming up with the provision of instant COVID-19 tests, even as you start the journey to get onto the plane. They want to make sure that you try and check in on to go digital for a number of the services. They're trying to remove as much as possible the human interface. So you're going to do a bit of digital boarding passes. They're going to be serving bottled water instead of the water that is normally poured for you in a cup, etc. Now, even some airports are training dogs to be able to sniff out positive COVID-19 patients. So once you begin to ask the question of whether or not your current business model is viable, you may come to the point and realize that the status quo can no longer continue. And for that matter, you need to trigger a turnaround management framework. Now, let me add at this point that it is when you actually face crisis that they serve to reveal and magnify whatever underlying strengths and weaknesses you have as a business. So whilst COVID-19 may be more of looking like a catastrophic event, on one hand, it's going to also reveal as clearly as possible and even magnify the strengths that you have that you can leverage upon and the weaknesses that you would want to try and minimize as far as possible. Now, when we talk of this turnaround, we are trying to recover the economic performance of businesses following what we can say is an existence-threatening decline, because COVID-19 has really taken a toll on most businesses. Now, it could have occurred over a number of years, but maybe COVID-19 has just served to reveal that weakness. Now, just in case you're not too sure whether you should be triggering a business continuity or a turnaround strategy, one of the key things, or a few, and this list is not necessarily exhaustive, it's just a few of the tips. Now, where your forecasted sales are quite contrary to recent trends, you may want to think of triggering a turnaround management situation. Or in the case where you have no idea what your monthly break-even point is. And when I talk of break-even points, it means that you're making enough sales to ensure that the underlying costs of the business can be paid off. So at this point, you're not making any profit, neither are you making losses, but at least you're breaking even so that you can float at this point for a while. Now, if you cannot tell what your break-even point is, then you need to really get down to business and begin to do a turnaround. Or that you have challenges based on recent experience to even forecast what sales will look like in the next month or 2 or 3, it may be a time to start turning around. Or that you have no idea what your cash flow really looks like. That's also a warning sign that you may want to get down to the basics and trigger a turnaround management situation. And then if you also look at it critically, because of this social distancing that has evolved as a result of COVID, businesses are unable to handle the numbers that they usually were having. So what it also means is that for a number of them, pricing at this point is inadequate to provide a profit. When you find yourself in this particular situation, then there's a need to look critically at turning around. And also, if you do your periodic financial statement, whether for the month or for the quarter, and you realize that your profit before tax is approximately less than 10% of the revenue, then you know that these are some of the warning signs that mean you need to take some really serious moves about how to turn around your business. Now, I must say that the more you wait, whether to trigger a business continuity or move the turnaround route, the smaller the scope for action. Meaning that the longer you wait, the more likely it is that you're going to go out of business and it might be too late to do anything. So this is a time to act, and acting now. There should also be another case where we should not be blinded by what we refer to an assumption crisis. The assumption is that, okay, COVID-19 is going to pass over soon and we're going to revert to business and it's going to pass over soon. Most likely, if it does resolve itself, a lot of things are going to change on the market, and for which reason it is important to make the right move. Now, in the event that you want to consider a turnaround, there's a basic framework that you may want to look at. One of the key things then will be that you'd have to stabilize and stop the bleeding, because at this point, a lot of money is flowing out, but nothing is coming in. And so stabilizing the business means that you need to take a critical look at your cash and liquidity management. You begin to stem outflows of funds as much as possible and trigger as much as possible what can come in. You also need to manage your costs. So anything that is becoming excessive cost, you need to look at your strategic cost framework and begin to take the elements that you can plug in to stop the bleeding. Now, once the bleeding stops, the next thing you want to focus on is to fix the business, to redefine the core business. Now, this will definitely require some serious, comprehensive business model review to find out whether what you need to change in the area of the business, the core business of what you do, and then also reposition the business. Now, that may mean that you need to do some serious environmental stuff, because what you really want to do is to create a business that now has demand and can meet the demand and supply what market wants. It will also be important to look at some extra funding. So you need to start looking at opportunities for some injection of capital to stabilize you and then also to restructure you financially. And then there's a need to look at the stakeholders, starting from the employees, keeping them safe, and then managing them, your customers, regulators, your supply chain. So all the stakeholders, the entities that are affected by your business and whose actions also affect your business, you'd have to engage them accordingly so that you find the right framework. Now, these are the elements that could help to ensure that as much as possible, a turnaround, if the case may be, is relatively successful. It's important to do that assessment today, here and now, to know whether you need to trigger a business continuity framework or you need to trigger a turnaround strategy. Whichever way it is, it's important to look at the value chain, and then that is going to help. Now, as much as possible, how the firm responds to the crisis is the number one factor that will determine the success or failure in the turnaround, if the case may be. So how swiftly and how strategically the response is mapped out will determine whether or not the firm will succeed or the firm is going to fail. Now, there's an opportunity to fix a number of wrong decisions, but when the decisions take too long, then obviously the impact is more detrimental. So at this point, it's important to have multiple scenario planning frameworks and decide how we will act to guarantee continuity or to turn around the businesses in general. So you look at the value chain, you map out the processes that go into providing value for clients, identify the relevant mission critical activities. If they don't need a lot of modifications for reinitiation, then you trigger a business continuity strategy. And of course, that will require a business impact analysis, and then also having strategic options, and then implementing, and then doing some measurement. Now, what I can say in terms of getting to the end is to say that even though COVID-19 presents us with very novel risks, we need to be quite proactive. And of course, the scenario planning will give us a number of options we can look at so that our response is more proactive rather than reactive, because that's the only way we can actually avoid an economic catastrophe for Ghana. Because if the businesses fail, and these are the small businesses typically, when they fail, the economy is likely to fail along with it. And so we need to really move quickly to ensure that as much as possible, we are able to resolve these challenges and keep the businesses functional and still providing the services that we need. Thank you for your audience. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fiador. Why wouldn't I be proud that you are my classmate? So I'm happy to share in your excellence this evening. I thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to take questions. I have a lot of questions myself, but I'm going to allow colleagues to come up with their questions first. And I'm going to read those that I already have posted on the chat room. I'm trying to play a dual role of muting people who are making noise. So, oh God. Okay, good. Let me meet all the notorious noise makers. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Fiador, thanks very much for the presentation. I wish that I get the opportunity to assemble all my staff and faculty, and so that you tell them that, look, the turnaround, things are hurting, therefore we need space to do turnaround, so they should be softer on me so that they don't collect all the money that we will use to do the turnaround, you see. But I have here a question that says that how can a micro entrepreneur who cannot read, write, and analyze the business follow the framework to implement either a turnaround or continuity? So that's question one. Question two says, how should SME like market women use business continuity planning? The other one says, is there any collaboration to support MBSSI to support members of the informal sector to develop business continuity plans? Dr. Lord Mercer says, what is the difference between operational risk management and business continuity planning? How do you fit in government stimulus packages to business continuity planning? That's very important question. And then from Jennifer says, in a country like Ghana, how feasible is it to rely on current infrastructure to make business continuity plans a success? So these are 5 questions for you, and then we'll come back. Okay.
All right. So thank you. I like one of the very first ones about the informal person to use BCP. Yeah. And I like to add that, in fact, I have this lady who sells tomatoes. And of course, we all know that tomatoes are perishable. So once the system went into lockdown, I must say that I found her quite innovative, because periodically upon buying tomatoes from her, she started collecting data. So whenever you came around, say, oh, can I take your phone number? Can I take your phone number? Can I take your phone number? So she had actually collated this pool of tomato buyers, if I should put it that way. So her supply chain. So I'm sure, so in this case, we were more the distribution point. Now, immediately the lockdown went on. We were home one day when she actually called, indicating that she had taken a supply. And these are perishable things. So it means that if she doesn't let them go, that's a mission critical function. She buys them, she must offload. She actually calls, arranges transport, and the tomatoes are delivered to our homes. So now this is somebody who may not necessarily have gone to school. The truth is, I think sometimes we give them less credit than they actually are worth. They know a lot of these things. Maybe on the formal side, we are quick to document these and put them on paper, but they do. So helping them put them on paper to have a clear system so that they are not lapses shouldn't be, it might be a bit difficult, but it's not truly that impossible. So yes, the SME that may be of the informal sector, they still have some relatively interesting concept of BCP. How they implement it is what we can help them to structure. So I'm sure that that shouldn't be too difficult. Then I see another question about the difference between operational risk management and business continuity. Now, operational risk management is part of typical day-to-day, we are running operations and these are the risks. Business continuity is looking at the fact that in the event of a disaster, how quickly do we revert to business? So it falls under the broader risk management. Operational risk is more of, as we do our typical operations, anything that can go wrong or reduce this or affect anything negatively forms part of operational risk. Business continuity is about ensuring that in the event of something that is not considered normal or a major interruption happening, how do we restore the services as quickly as possible? So it's not necessarily operational risk, it's more about an event that has the potential to cause a catastrophe. So once we're able to do that, then, so that's the difference between the business continuity and then operational risk. Operational risk management is normal day-to-day managing the risks that occur as part of your operations. Business continuity is planning for an unforeseen event and knowing what you intend to do and the systems you need to deploy when they do occur. Then we have a case that in a country like Ghana, how feasible is it to rely on the current infrastructure for business continuity planners or to make it a success? We may have weaknesses, but a number of institutions are actually rolling out. Now, it is only when you do rollouts that you may find the glitches and the lapses that may either, in terms of help with research and policy, change some of the frameworks on the ground. So until we actually deploy what it is we have, we may not know whether it even works for us in Ghana in totality. But of course, as far as the formal sector entities are working, if you work to the insurance industry, for example, once the COVID-19 hit and there was a lockdown, most of them were working from home, and they are likely to continue that for the long haul. The banks also did the same. So yes, the infrastructure is there to support BCP. What we haven't yet tested is how the informal sector would roll that out completely. So until we attempt to roll out fully and we find the glitches, then we're going to look at the gaps and try to fill those in so that we can roll out a similar business continuity framework. Then we have an issue of how does government stimulus fit into this? Of course, at this point, business continuity is about having the plans, the resources, the people, and then the systems. So part of the money is going to literally fill in the resource gap, because for some people, maybe they need to get workers to be operating from home, but they do not have the infrastructure yet. So maybe by getting the relevant stimulus package, they may be able to then afford the necessary laptops, etc., so that their staff can still work from home and still deliver the elements. Have I missed any?
I think now you have answered all, except that there are a few more that have just been posted. The first one now says, COVID-19 began in November 2019 and slowly escalated. Would you say that, would you say we do not have proactive managers to have put in place measures to reduce the impact of COVID-19? The next question says, so I assume risk management by design should be considered as the new normal in business continuity planning. And then will businesses now be required or consider it advisable to sell their business continuity plans when hiring employees?
Okay, so of course, when it comes to SMEs, I wouldn't necessarily say that they are not proactive. They are proactive as per what maybe they have been exposed to. And of course, when you've got limited funding, you're not too keen on spending resources planning for something you think may never happen. And typically for the SMEs we may have in Ghana, it's more of the entrepreneurial spirit, I can do. So sometimes having systems seem to be a bit more the normal. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they are not proactive. They are being proactive as far as the capacity they have allows them. So it is also about doing the right form of engagement for people to appreciate the fuller scale within the environment, and then they're going to make the relevant steps. So that's what I can say to the proactiveness of our SMEs. Now, of course, risk management by design, yes. So business continuity is supposed to be because the truth is that nobody goes into business with a mind to close business. So business continuity planning should be part of the normal. And maybe COVID-19 has only served to show that it is supposed to be now the new normal. At any point in time, you should be prepared for anything that can be catastrophic. Maybe some time back you left it for the bigger businesses thinking that they would need it, but it's actually more critical for small businesses because you don't have the funding and the whatnot to allow 5, 6, 7 days to go on without business, because that cash flow is a lifeblood. Bigger businesses usually have cash reserves they may fall upon. They also have reputation they can leverage upon to take loans from the banks, etc. Whereas the SMEs don't necessarily have that clout. So for SMEs in particular, it's even more critical that business continuity becomes the new normal if we are to survive and go forward.
Thank you very much. And then we have, I think there's a question that we missed. And so somebody has reposted, it says, Beta says, is there any collaboration to support MBSSI to support members of the informal sector to develop business continuity plans? And then the second question says, Doc, please, how do businesses whose income are seasonal and usually at its peak during, for example, April, May, how do these businesses cope with the pandemic? And then the last one now says, a major headache for many businesses in this COVID-19 time is not how to put systems in place to ensure that the business systems still run, but the significant decline in the demand for their services and products. How does VCP deal with the decline in demand? And then the last one says, would businesses now be required to consider it advisable to sell their, so I think this question is getting reposted because we didn't answer it. Okay, so you answer the first three first, and then we can go to the next set of questions. Okay, so
when it comes to the support from NBSSI, we are more than glad and willing. In fact, academia exists to connect the dots for collaboration is more than welcome. So we are ready to do that and we can help. Now, when it comes to the issue about the decline in demand, sometimes that decline may actually be more of a business model issue. So like I mentioned earlier, it may be good to critically, if your business model required people to come to your end, question then is, how do you provide a service? So let's take the entertainment industry, for example. It was the fact that you needed to congregate at the venue for you to enjoy, whether it was music, it was a show, theatrical play, etc. Now, in the face of COVID-19 and social distancing, I'm not sure there are venues that have been equipped to take these persons. So what it means for such business usually is a complete business model overhaul. So then they may begin to start playing around with on-demand videos and shows and timed access, where you have maybe you're given access with a code that links you to access certain entertainment portals, etc., to be able to view the video. So now that entertainment literally comes to you in your home. Now, even when we move to that level, what is most likely to happen is the fact that now your market may no longer even be just Ghana, but once you actually sometimes employ some technology to help you do that, your market may now actually spread all the way to the sub-region and global. So those are things that, so it's more to look at whether the business model is what is hindering as well the decline in demand. And if that is it, that's one option to be able to deal with that. Now, the issue about selling the business continuity plan, in fact, it's not necessarily selling the business continuity plan as opposed to having it. It's supposed to be, it may not necessarily be for the employees, but it should more be even for shareholders, investors. Because if I'm going to put in my funds in a business, I need to be sure that in the event of some major interruption, there are systems in place to ensure that the business continues to function and so that my capital does not go to waste. So the selling of it obviously may not be about selling the plan, but about the fact that creating a reputational image out there that this is a stable business and that through thick and thin, through the fire, through the water, the business continues to be. Now, once you've got that kind of reputation, it automatically serves to attract the right kind of talent because they know that they've got security as far as their jobs and incomes are concerned. So that's one way where you're not selling the plan, but once you have that kind of plan, it gives you reputational resilience, which you can tap on to attract the right kind of talent. Yes.
And then the one says what? Seasonal businesses and the ability to cope with the pandemic. Have we responded to that?
Okay, so of course, with the seasonal businesses and coping with the pandemic, for them it may seriously mean a serious look at diversification. It comes back to a principle of trying not to put all your eggs in one basket. So if you've got a seasonal business that is going to peak around April and May, and this is the period where we have the lockdown, you may begin to even look at diversification in terms of, do you want to look at a different market? Do you want to develop a new product? Do you want to look at it in terms of distribution channel to reach the right people? So that whilst your business may have peaked around April, May, how do you get around what appears to still be a semi-lockdown of a kind? Those are the things, and of course that will require that management and the board will need to sit. And I always come back to the issue that if the board is not that strong, then these things are going to, of course, for firms that have boards, but for firms that don't have boards, whoever is at the helm of affairs will need to do some serious business level review to find out whether the pathway of generating value and transmitting to the customer has any glitches that need to be corrected. And once those are corrected, I believe a number of businesses should find their way out.
Great. A lot of questions are coming. At some point, we will put a cap on them. But so the first one is a major headache for business in COVID-19 times is how to put systems in place to ensure businesses are still run, but a significant decline in the demand. I think you have answered that question already. Would businesses now be required or consider it advisable? No, we have answered that already. What advice would you give to small businesses that supply customized products to the hospitals, so hospitalities that have virtually collapsed? And then decisions made by corporate bodies and individuals heavily depends on the accuracy of the COVID-19 data and reports given by the central government. It seems reports and data from our government are never inaccurate. I thought it probably say accurate. Do you think this factor and the politics being played by politicians in these times have also caused a huge harm to many businesses? Oh, okay, right.
All right. Okay, so it means I've got like two. So the businesses that have customized products.
Yeah.
Now, take the case of the car making industry. So there was actually a video on DWTV that I liked, apart from other videos I had seen, where now the issue is to look at the core competence. So you see, the car making industry was into making of cars. But with COVID-19, nobody really needs a car. They're struggling to stay alive. So what the car manufacturing company has done is to transition and use that core competence to start producing ventilators. So a number of the car making companies have channeled. The same way we had the case where we had alcohol distilleries, and then there was a lockdown, no bars are meeting, no recreational activities. They channeled that same facility into the production of hand sanitizers. Then you have a case where there was another one on a pizza making company. Since nobody was going out, they had their hot ovens which could bake at very high temperatures. They invested that resource into the production of face shields for entities. So what it means for now is to go back and begin to look at what is the core competence. It's not necessarily the product that is being put out there, but the skill set that is being used. Can it be redirected? So yes, we were producing something for the hospitality industry. You need to go back and move away from the product you were giving them, but rather look at the core skill that was being used. Can you just transition that core skill, like the distilleries, etc., transition into making alcohol-based hand sanitizers? Can you also refocus that core skill to produce something that the current environment may need? That will be one way to stay in business. And then the repeated question about what decisions made by corporate bodies depends on the accuracy of data, and what you believe that the government is playing politics. Well, I wouldn't want to talk politics. It may or may not be true, but another good thing with business is the fact that it relies on data, and there's a room sometimes to cross-check and validate these sets of data. So whilst you may think that government may be playing politics or may not be playing politics, if they have put that kind of data at verifiable sources, because those people have incentives and systems to monitor, you may want to go through those routes to see whether you can have access to this. And where you can collect some of the data yourself, that research will serve you well. And so I'm thinking that COVID-19 has harmed everybody, whether with good information or not. It seems to have harmed everybody. Yes, of course, getting wrong data may actually harm people the more, but at this point, I'm not in the position to dictate whether, or to say specifically whether the information being given is accurate until I lay hands on data that says otherwise and it is verifiable. The best I can say is that sometimes you may have to glean around and collect on your own data to augment whatever data it is you may be receiving from these central government entities.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fiador. You have been talking a lot. I don't want to punish you anymore. So you love your job. You chose to be a teacher. So I know you, when you give me a call, then I'm running because then I'm going to talk a lot. So thank you very much, Dr. Fiador. This brings us to the end of today's seminar sessions. Let me pay respect to all of you participants who have spent almost, I think it's now, almost 3 hours being on the internet and listening to these wonderful presentations. So my respect goes to all of you who have joined. Let me note that Professor George Ban joined us from Connecticut in the USA. Ms. Boatin joined us from Budapest in Hungary. Professor Eunice Akuto joined us also from the USA. Dr. Salia joined us from the UK. Of course, Professor Hussein, who was our second presenter, joined us from the USA. Let me acknowledge the very wonderful hard work done by our HOD of Finance to put the team together. Let me thank you, presenters, Dr. Fiador, Mr. Michael Andoh, and Professor Hussein for preparing to give these insightful lectures at such a great short notice. I appreciate all of you. Let me thank our colleagues, the faculty members and staff who made time to join. Francis Afedi Bedu joined us from Techima in Ghana. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And the many of us who have joined from across the world who I'm not able to identify. I see Mark Nkrumah, I see Mary Usu, Ewusi, all of them, especially my teacher, Dr. Dan Kwe. I appreciate you spending your evening and to joining this discussion. As I said, the essence of this is for us to distort thoughts, or if you like, disrupt thoughts, reorganize thoughts, and shape thoughts. And so thought leadership is the key in these presentations. And I want to thank all of you for being part of these knowledge generation sessions. We will be back here next week on Thursday. Let me just say that our sandwich programs are starting on Monday. So we would evaluate the impact of the sandwich teaching, which would usually be in the evenings, on the presentations, and we may push the presentations to a little earlier in the day or on another day, because the law faculty people have their starting at 1 p.m. and we don't want to have it at the same time. But we will get back to you before the end of the weekend or very early next week on the new series and on the presenters. I want to say thank you to all of you for supporting us, and I wish you a very good night. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.